again?
Yeah.
What? Transition!
Okay. There we go. Oh. Get all nice and set it and go.
Is this on Twitch or?
Yeah. Well, I think
We on YouTube.
on YouTube. Yeah.
You cool kids like that.
We can be more. We can be chiller about it. Oh. Well, welcome to the Kerfuffle podcast.
No, you're not welcome.
Oh,
Unfortunately.
Sorry. Sorry, we gotta do the intro.
Oh, we gotta do the intro real quick.
Yeah.
What's up, Kerfuffle Krew?
We were gonna do a one shot today or bisque, but we decided against it. We're gonna do the podcast instead. We just ate a bunch of food. We're all just kind of lazy right now, so we're gonna fill this time and do a little bit of D&D talk, or just any talk in general. I don't know. We'll see. We'll kind of see how this just organically goes. But I say organically, except I have questions. Okay. So I think one of the things I wanted to ask about, because I know we talk about this a lot, but when you're making a D&D character, whenever you make one, it's very hard to make like Joe the barkeeper, right? You're very average kind of just dude who's doesn't really have any special backstory as far as you were the son of a powerful mage or some deity blessed you with magic and stuff like that, and you're kind of
Literally just Joe.
well, right. Well, that's what I'm saying. So I mean, if you're because and I hate to bring it up again, but with the Hobbit movie or whatever, right? I know. It's just because D&D stuff with this, but I mean, he's just a guy, right? Who's in a Hobbit hole. Nothing special. Doesn't have any extra special training or some
I don't know.
crazy...
Didn't he know what's his name?
Who, Gandalf?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, he knows a wizard, right?
But he knows a wizard. That's 1,000 times more than me. I don't know a wizard.
Well, right. Well, as opposed to being a wizard, right?
You also don't live in a world where wizards exist.
That's what you think.
Right. Well, so I mean, if you were
Yeah, Jack?
Yeah.
Oh, so are you saying you do know some wizards?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah, that guy under the bridge.
what
Yeah,
guy
he
under
was
the
a
bridge?
wizard.
He showed me his magic wand.
I'm concerned.
But yeah, but when you're trying to create a character like that, I mean, because I mean, usually if you're trying to create something that's not this combat oriented thing, you're kind of pushed into the bard role, right? Because that's the most I guess normal class. That's you want to put it.
Less focused.
Right. Well, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to pinpoint. So I mean, I guess in a sense, if you wanted to make Joe the barkeeper, I mean, do you just not take a class in general? Do you just walk around and just punch things
That's
and
what I would
gain
do.
proficiency later on? So for example, if you were just Joe, right, and then you wanted to you were just a part of a big event and you ended up with this traveling group of people, would you just gain all of your experience and stuff like that through them? So you just start off your first couple levels just
Nothing.
existing,
Yeah.
and using your wits and lucky rolls.
You're just more like a NPC stat sheets then, where you just have your stats and then
Right.
some equipment and some specific normal dude-esque abilities.
Honestly, I would love to play like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Because
Like,
imagine you'd
grow
start
into your class.
right. Well, you'd start your first couple basic because I mean, in essence, if you were to do that, you at the rate at which the party was growing, right, you would reach level we'll say 18 or 19 while everyone else was level 20 because you'll always be one behind if you were gonna play it like that, which I think is fine. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that.
I mean,
But
you don't even necessarily have to be. Well, the thing is with this whole thing, you can literally just have average Joe and have them just be a fighter or something. I understand what you mean with it being they're not super experienced with combat, but the whole idea of just an average Joe is going on this adventure, you can still be
Right.
have that work. Because if you're in a world with magic and stuff, then your average Joe might just use magic
Right.
in their day-to-day life.
Well, and that's true. It could just be ingrained in them.
So
So then
that's-
what? Everyone's a sorcerer?
Well, to
Well, yeah, so
to
then-
that same point, there's also the sorcerer
Right.
who just runs into magic or is born with it.
Right.
Like, for example, like in our campaign, Perrin
He's just
It's-
on vacation.
is literally just some dude on vacation.
Well, but he's
No,
also a
he has
druid.
abilities and
He's a
stuff.
druid who went to a school or something,
Well,
right?
yeah, but
I
it's
was
like
in an
that's-
observatory.
Right.
I ran my own observatory that I inherited from my parents, and then you guys stumbled upon me, which is weird plot hole there, but
It was literally adventure.
Hey.
Adventure?
Would you
Is
like?
there
would
money?
You want revenge?
Adventure.
and then I took a ride on someone's flying piano.
That's right. You literally just got picked up by.
He just got on.
and you just screwed
Pop
up.
on, loser.
Do you still have that after the change? Because it's custom building.
You just haven't been able to use it because we've been stuck on a
'Cause-
boat.
Because we're always in a place where
That's
it,
true.
where it won't fit.
Yeah.
We haven't been traveling like the open plains in a long
Right.
time.
I'd say we.
Which
we've
it was
been
really
on the
it was
boat
really useful.
pretty much the whole time.
Like
Boat.
pre-boat. Yeah.
Oh yeah, getting around just it probably saved us quite a few encounters. That's what I imagine. 'Cause you're kind of
Saved us-
skipping through it.
A ton of time
Yeah.
is the main thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, and I think it's kind of funny because with like Perrin, because I'm trying to remember exactly what we said to get you to come along.
Honestly, I don't remember.
Do you even
Perrin at
remember
all.
what we asked you?
I remember I was trying to so this was our first session together, and
Right.
this was over Discord.
Right.
because of Rona, and I remember I was trying to put out some sort of story so that way it would have a better lead into it. But I think you guys basically were just exactly adventure, and then just
We had to work harder to get Capper than we
Which
did.
You guys told
Yeah.
him what you were doing.
Right, which I don't think there's
Essentially.
necessarily anything wrong with that when you just want to basically, because I mean, okay, think of it.
That's what I'm
Think
saying,
from the
like,
perspective of
with,
somebody
yeah,
who lives a day-to-day boring life,
Perrin lives,
right?
Perrin inherited this big observatory and stuff, but that's not something that's out of the realm of possibility for just your average guy to just inherit some big shit from his parents.
Right.
And then, because it's not he inherited the powers of some druidic god from his parents. It's just he has an observatory, he likes nature and does some magic shit with it.
So it's
And then
basically
he's
the
just,
difference.
and then you just decided, yeah, sure, I'll just go with these guys on their journey.
Yeah, it's
That's-
basically
he-
the difference
he
between
basically
Superman
is-
and Batman.
Yeah.
You get the stuff, or you acquire the stuff over time, but you're not born with it, type thing.
Yeah.
That's the main difference there.
Right. Well, and I think that's always because I think that's always a viable way. When I was thinking about it, because I was usually, because I for my campaigns and stuff, I like having a organic kind of this is how all the fates collide kind of thing, and it's because this person does this, which is
As a
because they're
background,
working
you're
with,
saying?
huh?
As a background, you're saying?
Yeah, well, okay, so you haven't done this because you haven't been in any of my campaigns, but the way I usually run it as session, well, technically session 1, but they're all solo quests, and I basically give you one session to introduce you to your backstory, because I'm not a huge fan of just kind of things being the way they are. I think having a sense of this is where I came from, because it's easy for you to imagine that you lived in a small village or something like that, right?
Right.
And you could just say that you were part of a small village and then you left because you wanted to go see the world.
Drew
But
isn't a fan of the whole everybody just meeting in a guild or a tavern.
right, the very classical you all meet in a tavern kind of thing. And so I like people to have kind of a fates collide kind of thing. And I mean, I'm not totally opposed to everyone meets in a tavern as long as it the story called for it, right? It's if your characters all for some reason needed to be at this tavern, right? Because you're all meeting up with a contact who's gonna send you on this mission so you guys can get money to handle your own individual, whatever you got going on, right? But I definitely think that kind of coming back to it, that a reason to go out adventuring can literally just be going out and adventuring. I think people just inherently maybe just get bored of day-to-day life, and it's just aspiring, right? Just like looking at like a musician or a rapper or something like that, right? They just have an interesting life that looks really fun, right? And so you go around, you find a talent, and you go out adventuring, and you just want to, get cool stuff and kill some monsters, and you're willing to take that risk because sitting at, your observatory.
I mean, Perrin's a really good example of this, just because like most people would see that as just simply a boring life where you just spend time, teaching people the ways of the circle of stars or whatever,
Right.
and just being in the observatory, and so that would make sense why.
Staring at the sky.
I actually just realized that. I didn't even actually think about that before.
What?
The way that the observatory and the circle of stars connect. I thought you were the observatory was just a cool little tidbit.
No, that was a special way of how I created the character, is that I wanted it to be. I didn't know that Druid was a thing prior to this campaign.
Right.
I just wanted to create a character, and it just so happened I think John introduced me to the Circle of Stars. He showed it to me. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I was like, well, maybe I can make this guy like some special astronomy themed.
Well, and did
character.
you pitch like a star related character, or were you just like asking for ideas and?
Well, originally it was just a class. Then when you saw that subclass,
Gotcha. Okay. Did you go through the rest of the subclasses just to see what they had going on?
I think Perrin is probably one of the one of the few characters I think I've worked the hardest on creating. Just a lot of going into it. I spent a bunch of time working on him. I mean, with like Imsh, I didn't spend that much time. I mean, maybe 3 hours maybe I took on him. I don't know.
That's quite a bit of time.
That's way shorter than how long I spent on my characters.
I think John and I sat on.
I can't figure out how
call
D&D works.
For like 4.5 hours, I think, trying to make Perrin, and then we did like a quick recap of the night before the session happened. So.
And I feel like a lot of that is just because it's your first character now.
Yeah.
well, first spellcasting character.
Technically, this is my second character because I did a previous campaign with another friend of mine, and I was playing as a human fighter, and that was a fun character, and that actually made me think back to when we were talking about just like how you don't like backgrounds and the fate of everything has to happen a certain way.
Well,
And
yeah.
So
yeah.
how in that campaign, how it worked is all of our characters we met up in a prison. Like we all had done like petty crimes.
Right.
We started in a prison.
That's cool.
And then we had to go to. We had met the king of this place, and he was like, "There's something going on here, and I don't want to send anybody else because they're too valuable to me. So we'll send you guys because you're worthless convicts."
That
And
sounds like that one
Suicide
video.
Squad.
That's just
That
straight
sounds like
up
the one
Suicide
video
Squad,
where the king rises out of the hot tub.
And so we went to these islands, and then, I mean, I touched a sword, and that was the.
Oh.
Well,
Whose sword?
The hilt of a sword.
Who's
Only
hilt?
the hilt?
Technically, it's the claymore
Tis
hilt
but a hilt.
of Umanoran is who the god is of this world.
So you
The
touched the
evil god.
god's hilt?
Some would say yes.
he's not good about that.
But
Right.
yeah.
Well,
that,
and-
I don't know if that was like an organic thing, but I thought it was interesting because it's not like your just standard tavern startup. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's another one of those things where, because I would say that's a different example of a like session 1 where it's the kind of like a common event kind of thing. Or well, no, I guess that one's kind of more like a tavern one where it's kind of like you all have done something to meet up in this one place.
Well,
'Cause
even your story kind of had that set up.
Well, right, exactly. You guys all had-
in the latest campaign. We all pretty much met up at the same place.
Yeah.
The exception was
Jono.
Jono.
Yeah.
What's his character's
But
name?
even then, he ended up just coming to the same place.
Well, yeah, and it was like
we all
I
ended
really
up.
don't think it accomplished
Actually-
anything additional.
what?
You could just like writing the backstory. I'm pretty sure would just have the same result.
Well, right, but understanding where you're coming from, right? Because like
I don't think so.
Well, even if you just
Writing the
you still
backstory
know.
doesn't do the same thing.
Well, not if
'Cause
you only write like a
Because
small paragraph.
my
template.
character's backstory is different than the session 0.
that's
Like I'm sure
That's
half
the
the
person's
people.
fault if they write a paragraph.
Well, but then that's no fun, right? Like that's no fun for that person when they come across it. Because I find that it's more interesting if people are going to be more involved with their backstory if they have characters, right? That they
I
meet
would
up.
agree because
They know
No matter-
people, they know their situation, and they really understand what your environment is like back home. Because a lot of people, I think when they write up things, it's something they're kind of just like, let me get this out of the way, or let me justify why my person's here, so that I can make a bear totem
Because it's
wild
like if you're-
shape,
I think that's a
or
I
if you're
think
writing,
that's a
if you're
separate
having to
issue.
sit there and like write your backstory rather than doing like writing a good amount of backstory, but then doing a solo session 1.
yeah.
What that solo session 1 does, it allows you and the DM to work together in I think a much more organic way than just going back and forth on writing a backstory for your character. Because just going back and forth, it almost feels like if you're like from the perspective of the person writing their character, that back and forth feels almost like you're like negotiating and trying to debate with the DM to try and get your backstory to be what you want, versus you just write like a basis for it, and then you do like,
You get to
and then you
experience.
experience it,
I-
and then it's
And it kind of
the
writes
DM
itself.
Yeah, and then it
Yeah.
kind of writes itself in a
Well, and you're-
less like almost like confrontational way. Right?
For- For Gaston,
I still don't
I
think it
made
has to
mine.
be confrontational.
Yeah.
Like the player should walk in knowing they have to like fit into the setting and all of that anyway.
Not necessarily. Like I made
It also acts as almost a testing one shot for your character.
the fuck.
Those solo quests. If you do, because that's a good time to like do. You basically get to do a quick one shot, and then if you find out, wow, I hate this.
Right, you hate
then,
that character.
Then you're not already into the actual session. You can just basically write on it. And
Well, the polar
do a
opposite
different character.
of that is also possible in the solo quest. You can have a character you really like, and because of how this game works, you can go off in a different direction and not end up meeting the party.
you're not wrong.
In a way, I think. I mean the.
You're not wrong, but
There's always some sort of railroad.
I was gonna say
there's
the
always
background
some way
part. Well,
that the
because
DM can basically turn you in that direction.
yeah.
much no matter
Well,
what
I mean
you
that's
do.
the same. That's the same thing as like for when you started your campaign, right? The boys who were all on the boat, they're all gonna be on the boat. You guys don't get a choice. You're on the boat. You're gonna all be shipped off together, and you're gonna show up on the island, right?
But the reason
So
Well,
I'm
that's
just
not-
doing
well,
the
that's not-
roundabout way of
That's
that.
not how it was, though.
Did they? Well, could they have
Well,
chosen
let's
not
talk-
to get on that boat?
Let's talk about my solo. Well, no, they couldn't have, but that was a written backstory.
Well, that's what we're talking. Well, that's
we're
what
talking about written backstories.
Is that wasn't
versus-
that's what
Well,
we're
right. So
talking
I'm
about,
just
right?
taking
Okay,
the roundabout
referring
way.
to my solo.
But go ahead.
If I Goblin Camp,
Mm-hmm.
I could have just said, "Oh, I don't really want to run to this train anymore. I'm too scared," and then it was over.
Okay, well then that character would not have wanted to do that. You've just decided that your character is not the type who wants to go adventuring and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So if
well,
you're already in that mindset before you wanted to leave,
But then you
why
have
would
no,
you want to
then
leave
you
to go
have no way
adventure?
to get me there.
But you're just implying that you didn't want to. You didn't want to do
How
it.
is that different with a written backstory?
Yeah. Because
Well-
basically now you're just saying because if
With a
you're
written backstory, you could say, "Oh, he was too scared to leave," but then something happened, and
then
But in the
that's
solo
where-
quest, something
Then you got
happens.
captured
something's gonna
anyway.
happen. In basically, because in a way, right? Like most of the time, right? Especially in D&D and storytelling, unless like your party is very content on just not doing the dangling plot hook you're putting right in front of them, then
Well,
it's
there are people who are like that. So the
And that-
solo quest is
right,
never a
well, and that's-
guarantee.
but that's fine. I think it's still again like you're I'm just completing the same thing, but just a more roundabout way in a more immersive way. You get to experience what it's like to be at the Goblin Camp, right? Or the journey you took to get to Titan, right? And it's not just it was a long
To
journey
me, it felt.
and I hate the guy.
If I'm being honest, to me it felt less immersive than just writing a backstory.
Mine actually was way more immersive because I had no idea what I wanted to do with my character until I played the one shot. Because Gaston in like Disney is selfish, and my Gaston is not selfish, and I made that as a split decision, and I'm happy about that.
Well, and
As
that's,
opposed to
And
if
that's
I wrote
okay.
a backstory about that, I wrote my backstory after I did my solo, and that helped because I knew about how he acted, how he got there, when I made it how he got there, because you're testing out the personality instead of the backstory.
So you're saying, well, okay, and that's okay, but there's some people that when they write the backstory, they already know the personality and what the character's going to be like.
I don't know if you can.
Well, then why would they change their like course of routine? You know what I mean? So
If
it's
they're doing the one shot,
Well,
why would they
I'm
change
not referring to
that.
that. I'm referring to
But
this.
sorry, go ahead. Yeah, my apologies.
A good example.
That's my
Well,
point.
a good example.
Yeah.
Of,
What
like,
if somebody doesn't need to do that? What if they already know the full backstory they want to get there and the personality?
Well,
Well, then again, we're coming back to we have to go this back and forth about it has to fit into the setting.
One shots and why every game and not every game does have one shots. Like, for example, I kind of wanted to do one shots for the scuffed thing.
Well, it
but
was
then we
it
just-
was a requirement in this case. That's
Yeah,
the most
in my
thing.
case, yeah.
In his case, yeah, because he wanted to. He just
So the DM's
wanted
volition.
to do that. But it's like, not every campaign is gonna do that. I don't think. Not necessarily every single Drew campaign is gonna work. We're always gonna do solo quests before every single one.
Probably not. Yeah.
And-
I mean, it just depends on how it's.
There'll probably be circumstances
turns
where
out.
you have your backstory written up in such a way that it already like aligns good enough for you to get entered in with the party, and everybody else might want to do solo quests, but you already have like this filled out backstory and stuff that already fits in, so you just don't even need to do one. That's the thing with
Yeah, I
solo quests.
completely agree with that. It should be an option. either
Yeah,
way.
it's just it's a good option to have because, for example, again going back to your campaign with Demetrius, something that I learned in the solo quest. Wow, Ranger blows.
Yeah. Ranger
And, like,
blows.
Ranger blows. And like, I probably should have asked Drew about it after that solo quest to just change his class and stuff because I just don't like Ranger.
Yeah, which I'm fine with doing. It's like
Yeah, and
in
it's
those kind of cases, if you feel like, because I think that's what's important, right? Is I don't know. I mean, I guess this is more from your perspective. I don't know how like being able to like be so definitive on the character you've chosen, and like when you go into it, and maybe it's what take us through your process whenever you're like doing a character creation, because like whenever I'm making a character, right, I usually have like this. I personally like everything to like flow very naturally. I like that everything kind of explains itself, and there's not just a gap where it's just like, or I don't know, or it's just because, or there's just like a hole in maybe their personality or their backstory or something that just it makes it kind of disconnect whenever I find like a hole in that. But
well,
so like,
give
what
me
do
an
you?
example of one of my characters that has a hole or something like that.
No, I'm not saying that yours has a hole. I'm just saying like going through, because obviously whenever you make a character, right, you're good with it. You're content. And
None of those things even go through my mind. I just make the character I want.
Well, right, but so like,
Well, I
but like, what are your? I mean, do you start with just like an idea for like a cool ability, or what's your train of thought from beginning to end whenever you create a character?
Yeah, I mean, just a person, just an idea for a personality.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, it's an alternate version, or something similar to something from a game I played. Usually,
Right. So you're usually pulling like inspiration from a lot of the like any like medium. You look at it as like a movie or a video game,
Or sometimes literally just Jack.
or sometimes literally just Jack.
or sometimes.
Right.
Dude, there's just a wealth
And
of
then-
personality right here. You could pull a single part, and that's an entire character.
The ability, I usually get the class from their backstory, to be honest.
Right.
Which is another
So you make the
reason
backstory
I didn't like
first
the
before
solo,
the
and I
class.
asked. That's part of the reason I really didn't like the solos, and I just asked to write it.
Right.
Well, maybe that's part of the reason why you should be pretty much always okay with your characters, because you always build yours. You're like, I have a very specific like personality, which basically determines like a lot of how you play the character and stuff that I want to do, and you just already know because it's from a game or something that you like that you're already gonna like that.
Or a person, I know.
Yeah, or
Right.
yeah, or
Of course you know.
So you're already gonna like that. So then you don't have to worry about.
Wait,
a lot
you
of that.
like
But
me?
For example, like
Well,
with me,
technically, no, I don't always like it.
you don't
but
always like it, but it's like.
I don't think I necessarily have to like it. To me, it just has to be interesting, which I don't think there's any personality that's not interesting.
For me, it's very.
Like I would be okay with suffering through a 20 charisma character because it's not me and it's interesting to play not me.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. For me, it's like a lot of my characters are based on like I have one specific interesting like ability or set of abilities, and then I just branch out from there and build a whole character. And sometimes like the personality and like just how the character ends up playing and stuff, based on that, I just don't end up liking. So that's why I kind of like the solo quest things. It's a good place to test it. For example, with Demetrius, my initial thought with him was a kind of like insane, like slightly like unhinged, like vigilante type character, where he has like just these massive mood swings. So basically his whole sanity thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the basis for the thing, and then everything was built out around that. And then I just ended up not liking the fact that the thing built out around that ended up being a ranger.
Right.
Well, sometimes, so it's like, I feel like then it like kind of depends on your personal process for making a character as to whether solo,
And also,
like testing things beforehand like work for you or not.
it also depends on how much you care about how well your character does. Like, there's people who are okay with playing ranger because they want to roleplay a ranger and they don't really care how it does in combat, or it
For
has
me,
one specific environment.
For me, it's like, it's just whether a character does well or not in combat is determined based on like how I wanted the abilities and stuff to function. And with Demetrius, it's just so hard to get it to like function the way I want it to. Not necessarily that it does well, because he's actually not really designed to do well in like a lot of situations, because it's always like sometimes he's either going to do super well because his sanity happens to be tilting in the way that things are happening, or like, oh, he's really sane and we're going to like a dinner party where there's going to be a lot of talking and stuff, so that works out really well. Or the other way, he's like completely unhinged and we're also going into combat, so that works out really well. And then sometimes it's the other way around, and that's fine. But the issue was with Ranger specifically, because Ranger's just ability set, it's like I have that interesting thing, but then I can't do anything else with it because Ranger just doesn't do anything good. Like you can roleplay as a Ranger type character without even being like a Ranger. The whole reason why it ended up being a Ranger was
Rangers
just
are just designed to be specific to like an environment and a specific enemy,
Yeah, but
which doesn't always come up.
Yeah, and it doesn't always come up. And also, I personally think that the buffs for that are not nearly strong enough.
Yeah, I think Ranger needs
It's
a couple. It still needs more revisions, and I think because I'm looking at the Ranger class right now, and a lot of the things they changed. For one, was to make it more versatile, because when you're going from favorite enemy to favorite foe, it allows for a little more versatility here, where you're not just stuck with one guy. You get a little more for. It's kind of like having like a mini hunter's mark, because it's just you get to add a D4 to a favorite enemy and deal damage to it, and you could just basically choose whatever favorite enemy you want.
And it's a type of enemy, right? Like aberration, fiend.
It can just be you. It's literally just like hunter's mark, and you select that person or that target, and you get that D4. So it doesn't really matter what it is. You don't even have to be within this select group anymore. It can be anything, but it's just you have to like as a spell more or less. You add a D4 or whatever. The one that I really wanted to like expand was the Natural Explorer. I feel like that one is a cool idea, but in like actual game terms is pretty dog. Like terrain doesn't slow your group's travel. Your group can't become lost except by magical means, which is kind of ironic because that's something we've experienced. Even when you're engaged in another activity while traveling.
Reading it now realizes it's useful.
Well, right, but I mean,
in a few applications.
But that's like the one time out of all the. I mean, because think about how much we've been out in like the wild and stuff like that, and like this man's straight up just eating
There's plenty of times.
squirrel heads, and
He
it's
just
like
rolls to find squirrel.
There's plenty of times that were
like
that you were either slowed or lost.
well, right, but in the end, we're getting to this location, and unless behind the scenes things are happening that could change the event of the story, which it could or could not be, that time between when we get from point A to point B won't matter because it's like the boss is going to be here, so if it takes us an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 weeks of in-game time, the boss is probably still going to be there because it's
Along
an
with
event.
whatever MacGuffin he's guarding.
Right, exactly.
Like,
because then it's a boring story if they show up, everyone's gone, he's already packed ship and went to the next
That's
place.
not boring. That's
I
oh
think
no, the
that's
player's just
interesting.
messed up and he's already gone.
Possibly.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's
that leads to more things, but it's just not a situation that comes up super often.
yeah, and especially
Where you're like basically in a race to go get this. It's just not something that comes up super often. And like being lost and stuff, it'll debuff you, but it'll usually not debuff you to the point that like even if you are in a race that it'll affect it all that much. Like you're usually not gonna lose like weeks of time.
Depends on where you are.
It depends on where you are, yeah, and like a lot of other things. But like for example, in our campaign,
Well, there's
we only lost in all of our traveling time, like between things. We only lost like maybe like had to travel for like a few extra days, if even.
well, that's just the environments you've been in. Like there's some environments you travel at half speed the entire time unless you have that buff.
and that's a
So your time
possibility.
is just doubled unless you have that buff.
Or,
And that's what-
or
is-
unless you have a
Is
flying
that
ship.
Or a magic piano.
Is that for in general or in favorite terrain?
I think that for a natural explorer, I think it's specifically for favorite terrain.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, see,
it
and that's the issue. Is that then it has to be
Yeah.
favorite terrain too. And that's something that like
see now, a campaign setting that I think Ranger would be really fun in is in the
a lot of
Icewind Dale. You know which one I'm talking about? It's like it's a module.
Christmas module.
Yeah, well, it's a module about like this like deity who's trapped all of the like lands in eternal winter, and one of the main focuses of that, or one of the like main themes in that entire module is basically man versus nature. Like if you're not fighting monsters or fighting the time, you're fighting the environment. Like everything is constantly trying to attack you. It's cold all the time, so you're constantly getting levels of exhaustion. You can barely find food because everything's covered in snow, so it's everything. All the plants have died. Most animals are hiding and stuff like that. So it's really a like survival situation. And I think that's one of those things where it's like it depends on what group you're playing with. Some people like the survival aspect and they like the little bit of challenge, and some people are like, just get me to the fucking dungeon.
Yeah.
Let me just go fight some monsters.
Yeah, because I would argue like in general.
Let's get to the city so I can chill.
Most people will find most people won't find their survival stuff super interesting because on paper it's just yeah. On paper it's just on paper it's not super interesting. It's just you wanting to survive versus compared just surviving in the middle of just a tundra
Right.
compared to like finding a bunch of magic stones to go talk to gods and then go like beat the shit out of some guy in a wizard tower.
So you go
Right.
get a fist bump from God.
So
It's
really,
compare,
it's
like,
but
those
yeah.
two things, and it's like
So
which
it's your
one
focus.
sounds more interesting.
Right. So it is that focus in
And so because that,
discerning.
like pretty much every campaign
What
ends
you
up
want.
going in the direction of magic wizard tower versus middle of nowhere.
Right. Exactly.
So then Ranger just gets like dicked over, and it's like it has its place
Yeah.
in D&D because there are still those campaigns and stuff where it is survival focused, but it's just for our campaigns and the way that we play, it is not very useful.
Yeah. Well, and another thing I wanted to mention about the Ranger class,
I would
if you
prefer a mix of both.
if you
to be
really get
honest.
into it,
A mix of both is nice. For example, like us, like having to roll to like travel through the woods or like rolling for like navigation and stuff as we're traveling in our boat is like fun, especially with all those weird little encounters and stuff you find along the way. But it's like when if it's like even if it's like 50-50, that means 50% of the time you're basically just gonna be useless. And it's like Ranger should just be a extremely like jack of all trades type thing, and it half does that, but then it's half just like you're like good at surviving.
Right. Well, and I
It's
think
like,
one,
that's
I
just-
think an interesting way, or because when I was looking at the class, and a lot of people when they make like builds for it, what it often sounds like is it's one of those rather end the fight before it begins or avoid the fight altogether. Right. If you look at a lot of the abilities and stuff like that, a lot of it is being able to like not fuck yourself over while you're out in like the wilderness and stuff like that, because if you do, then it's like you're dead, right? Like if you look at like what do we have here, like hide in plain sight, or well actually they have nature's veil now, which I think is another invisibility one. Vanish, feral senses, don't even get me started on the level 20 ability. But I think a lot, if you look a lot of the build, at least for it, feels like it's feels like one of those ones you're trying to rather avoid the fight or end the fight before it begins.
And it's like,
And nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to fight the monster.
Big monster.
It's like it's smarter.
Most people want to fight
It's
the monster.
Smarter and more, and it's smarter.
Right, Adam?
It's smarter and interesting to like, and the fight before it begins be super smart about
Like strategic.
and
Yeah.
strategic about attacking foe, but
That's just
it's a lot
boring.
more fun to just play like Adam and just walk up and do like 80 damage and then get fat loot.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just
also kind of.
it's a lot more
That
straightforward.
also
to do
kind of
that.
goes into metagaming too. Like,
Cause like
yeah,
if you're,
sure, Adam wants to do that, but what would his character want it to do?
The same thing.
Well, in Guntor's case, yes, but with a different character, possibly no.
possibly no, but it's like it's
Some
like
ancient dragon comes down and you're hiding in a cave right below it. Yeah, I'm sure all the players want to go out and fight it, but would the characters want to do that? No, the characters would likely be scared.
Yeah,
and
That's
running
probably
into the
true, but
cave.
then you're fighting character over your own goals, right? If you think it's going
It
to be fun to
depends
go
on-
fight a dragon, you're going to put aside what your character thinks.
Which is what you shouldn't do.
Well, I don't know about that. You should definitely. You should just be doing what you want to do.
playing to have fun.
Yeah.
You just shouldn't be having that conflict with your character to begin with. You should
Exactly.
be making a character.
True.
If you want to have it, if you want to go fight dragons, and like just not be
Well, that's a
worried
thing.
about that kind of thing, then you should be
Then
making,
making a character that wants to do
wants
that.
to go do that, not
There are-
making a character that would want to just sit and hide in a cave.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's
Well, there's some people who like characters that go different than themselves.
Well, and that's
well,
fine
that's-
too.
well, that's
but
fine,
what
then
you do run into though is then
Well,
it's
then- well,
your
then, yeah.
play style versus
If-
everyone else's. Because like I quickly learned with Uguay that it
That's
was
a good thing.
it was a no-win battle. No, because then that's me
Conflict
fighting
is a good thing.
conflict is a good thing, but there's certain types of but not all conflict.
a
is good.
never-ending conflict is not a good thing.
A like conflict that can have.
Gunter would have never
There was no
stopped.
proving-
Gunter would have never stopped killing things so long.
You can't make the
Guntor
point
would-
that was never ending when it was 2 sessions.
No, but I guarantee it. I literally asked Adam. I was like, "Are you gonna stop killing things because
It was
Uguay
more
said
than
so?"
It would
He
have
said
been more
no.
than 2 sessions, and like that would have been
Well,
just
then maybe-
literally a never-ending conflict within the party because no one's characters were.
Well, I
built
mean,
to
that's
be
an issue
decent.
with real people
He
too.
was a mob boss.
Two
He was a
people-
gladiator. I was literally a evil robot, and then you just have Uguay, and it's like that.
Yeah.
That's never
It-
gonna,
the party
that
dynamic
party
would just not
dynamic
work.
is just not gonna meld well.
I
Like
think
there is that
the only way
conflict.
pacifism could work is if the whole party was with pacifism. Like,
Yeah.
their
or
characters
even on the
before.
fence.
Like versus like
Well,
good conflict, like when
There's also the moment where
like debating giving the skull over, and the party was split over that. That's a
That was a
type
good
of
conflict, yeah.
That was a good conflict.
because it's not a never-ending conflict. It has a definitive like end
I would argue both
and
could have this.
resolution.
Both could have the definitive end.
Both can, but it's just like there's no reason for Uguay to suddenly be like, "Yep, I'm all right with you guys killing."
There
guys."
actually was.
Uguay would have been
When
cool.
he got taken out and murdered and dragged away, that was
Then-
very much an excuse to
that was an
realize
excuse for-
there are bad people. Not everyone needs to
If
be.
that's
My
fair.
attitude does not need to be complete pacifism.
You're not wrong there.
Well, yeah, but I definitely would have never taken that course because in Uguay's mind, right, this is just the reality, right? That this is just like the world it is. But he's trying to work to change that because though that is another example of
Well, he would
this
also,
is why the world is corrupt. This is why the world is corrupt, and
it makes sense.
he
but
doesn't.
it makes
He
sense.
doesn't want to end up
What Drew's saying
becoming
makes sense.
that.
Because if somebody is like completely dedicated to those ideals, regardless of whatever happens to them, they believe that just that's how the world is. But like,
And
you're
he'll
not gonna
work to
throw away-
avoid that next time.
Yeah,
not by killing,
you're
but
not gonna just throw away your ideals because because it's something he was already aware of. It's just now it happened to him.
well, I'm saying
Right.
he could have taken it that way to adapt with the party.
right. But I wasn't
Because
aware.
that's
I
part
wasn't.
of the
I
role
wasn't
playing
fully
game.
aware of that till
see, that's-
everybody started making nugget cats. Then I was like, oh man, this is
Everybody.
I don't know about this one, Chief.
And that's a fair point, but then at the same time that also conflicts with what you said earlier, where you shouldn't be doing what you want to do. You should be doing what your character wants to do. Play your character. If you play your character, then yeah, it makes sense for him to not change from that
Well,
because
it's
he's
still
already
okay.
seen that happen 1,000 times around him. It just finally
It's still
happened
okay
to
to
him.
play an
That's just how life
adaptable
is.
character that reacts to what happens to them.
That's true as that may
Yeah.
be. That's not the character he made.
Right.
And, that goes
And
back-
so
that
I
again
quickly
goes back to the
decided that
whole-
I didn't like that character.
And that again
And I
goes back-
wasn't. Well, there was a. See, and this is what I was talking about, where I make a character in a very definitive way, and this is how they are, right? And I understand people can change, right? But the course of actions that were happening, like from my, because I try to play my characters as best I can, but so when I realize that it's like, if I'm sitting in Uguay's shoes the way I made him after spending fucking hours making Uguay and thinking about his personality, I sat there for a moment and thought, okay, would Uguay stick around with these guys for all the shit that's going to happen? And me metagaming, knowing what my players are like, that's not going to happen. It's just we're too goofy. We have too much of a good time. We like killing things. We like getting cool loot. Like that's just what's going to happen. And Uguay would rather have to just give up on the ideals that I set for him and just be okay and have a fun, goofy character, which is fine. But that's not what I wanted to do with him. I'd rather have had somebody else as opposed to playing Uguay, because Uguay in my mind was set up a certain way, and I didn't want to just change it just because I know you're trying to run a more like formatted style of D&D where it's not just like flip on a dime kind of stuff, right? It's like there should be a reason why Uguay would want to.
Well, there was never a point where the characters even talked about it. Like, it was never even brought. I don't think Uguay in character ever talked to Guntor about that.
Well, again, that's probably true. And so, but I've already discussed it. Like, I've already figured out that wasn't going to happen. Like, it literally wouldn't have changed anything. The result would have been the same. I would have just thrown out Uguay later on, as soon as Uguay was like, okay, I've tried all this and nothing's changed, so I'm dipping.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Well, there's a lot of times where people like that, despite differences, still stick around because they need to get to a goal that those people are also going to.
And that's probably true too. But again, like I just didn't want to play Uguay anymore. Like that was just that character. I felt like, okay, I'm not gonna have fun trying to debate every single fight, trying to get people to not fight things. That's not fun for me. I don't want to sit there and tell the players not to fight things, because that's not fun for them either. Sitting there and basically, oh, all right, Uguay, I won't go kill the epic monster
This time.
Good job, guys. Yeah, no, it's like nobody wants to do that, and I didn't want to make them go through that. I don't think that was fair to the players.
Could you imagine if Uguay
So then I made.
had met the guy that was telling him to go kill Adrian?
Oh yeah, seriously.
Or even had accepted the entire quest for the stones.
Right.
He would not have.
Yeah, no.
'Cause he
Yeah,
wanted to go
actually,
deep still.
he would have not, because he needed to go to the tree of Idrisil or whatever, Idrisil. But, and so I flipped a dime and then made a character that was just gonna go and kill everything. It made a more Guntor-esque character
And
with
work
Shao
with the
Kahn.
party.
And then
Yeah.
that also didn't work with the party.
Because he was a dick.
Yeah, because he was too aggressive.
He was literally just off his knockers all the time, balls on your chest.
You want boys on your chest.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, man, okay, this guy sucks. And then I finally settled on Alistair turned Meadley, which is I wish I started with Meebly in the beginning. Meebly, I realized, was a very adaptable character because I don't think I put so much effort into, which is maybe my problem, is I'm putting too much effort into my characters because Meebly has been very adaptable based on the situation. In retrospect, when I first made Meebly, he would have not said the things or have the vindictive killing nature of wanting to destroy Kyrol as he does now.
That's kind of the point I was trying to make in the beginning, is that you kind of have an analysis paralysis and you focus way too much on every tiny little hole that your character might have.
Yeah.
Right, and so yeah, maybe making it more freeform is probably the way to go, and I'm fine with that. I usually get caught up because I want to be like invested in my character.
You can still be invested and not do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's probably true too. But I usually don't have that foresight. I'm working on my thing and I'm having fun making them, and then once it's like too late, then I'm like, oh well. Or I make a new one and I can just do the Jack method and just make it like a day before. Then I'm not as like super heavily invested.
I do not make my characters the day before. I make them 2 days before.
The hour before.
I make them while we're sitting around getting ready to play the game.
Yeah. You end up really liking your characters though.
Yeah, but he always ends up liking his characters. That's
Yeah.
because he like cycles through like the same like
Personality.
2 or 3 personalities and backstories, and he just knows that it works. Don't say that's wrong.
He's like, I'm insulted.
You guys are wrong.
That sounds like a Minecraft character.
What?
Mob boss.
Mob boss. No, I don't have the same 3. I have like 4 maybe. I don't know. Meki's different than every other character.
I love Meki.
Meki is very special. You
He
guys haven't seen Meki and stuff. It's the current Scuff campaign, and I don't know. Their characters are pretty ballin' in that campaign.
Yeah,
It's going really well in like
For
a
being
role
bad.
play and enjoyment sense. It's going very poorly for their characters.
Yeah, story-wise. Yeah,
Story-wise?
we're getting bent over.
It is going
See,
horribly.
I think it's going amazing.
It's going horribly story-wise because you guys have just been constantly failing.
Yeah.
And like, literally, you guys have finally left port. Fucking.
That makes
Like,
it so much
force-
more interesting. Though.
No. That's what we're saying.
That's
It's
what
fun.
we're saying.
It's fun, like
Good.
story-wise.
Yeah,
But as
good.
far as like actual in-game like success,
In terms of
it's
like,
been like 0.
like
Negative.
We have
good
fucked
things-
up the dock and the ship like
Good.
3 times.
good things.
The engine has exploded, maybe 7.
In terms of like in terms of
My
like,
new
the overall
mechanical-
like, D&D
my
story,
new fucking
the
mechanics.
role-playing,
The new mechanics are
gameplay,
drunks.
all of
Literally
that
just fucking
is amazing.
alcoholics.
Yeah.
The actual just how your characters are going in terms of just their luck and shit,
Yeah.
absolute dog shit.
We're probably
Well,
gonna
if
end up
everything
dying
went
soon.
well and went right, the story would be so boring. Conflict is
That's
what
true.
drives it.
Well, of course,
That's
yeah.
true.
No, and that's that is.
We're not talking about
super
like
important.
what's going on in the campaign. We're talking about the character's plan to go out
Yeah.
was just shit on,
Which is awesome.
completely.
No, and it is. It's a good thing. I'm glad that like everything, because now we're stuck with
That
3
was-
alcoholics as my mechanical crew or engineers.
It's,
3 guys who don't know nothing.
Which-
one guy who
Should've
knows
just
everything.
went to a bar and said, "Hey, you 3, come be mechanics."
Yeah, because so
That
so
sounds like us collecting the crew
stuff.
for our flying ship.
yeah.
We're just like,
seriously.
you have a face and a
Well,
freaking
so
pulse.
so
Get on
so
the
look,
ship.
a little more context though is Captain Flynn. That's my character. He's because we just went out to sea and we got like screwed over by like pirates and
literally
stuff like
one
that.
day.
Yeah,
They were at sea
we were
for
at sea at one day.
Pirates and submarines.
Pirates showed up,
Submarine
messed us
pirates.
up, and so we had to head back and kind of recuperate. Well, when that happened, Meki's and
Meki just said fuck it. and
Meki fired his-
yeah,
all
fired all of his
good
mechanics
engineers.
because they were just useless or whatever. He didn't like
Literally
them.
did nothing.
Yeah, he just didn't like them. And
He just
so
didn't like it.
so
Is that like that crew member that mysteriously disappeared off of the crow's nest?
it's well, that isn't mysterious. Technically, like
Everybody saw it.
Everyone saw
Everybody
it.
That's not
knows.
mysterious.
Everyone
But
saw it.
nobody
But just
brought it up.
nobody cares.
Nobody's brought it up at all. Only person that cares is sitting next to me.
I don't think John knows.
I don't think John really
No,
cares. He doesn't really care.
I'm surprised that no one's characters brought it up as far as roleplay goes.
His
Oh.
character brought it up.
Yeah, his character
His
brought
brought
it up.
immediately.
Yeah, right
And
after
was
it
gonna
happened.
like, and
He
was,
approached
like,
him.
almost threw him off the ship.
Yeah, I
Like-
mean, only him.
Only him. Well, I mean, Aslan.
Well, yeah.
and Meebly
Weak
respects me.
organic life form.
Meebly was gonna help me throw him off.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Before.
He was gonna help him throw him off.
He's just on
Karen-
vacation.
He's just on vacation.
I think the main thing is so like
I don't know how to
Karen's
feel about it.
chaotic neutral, but I think since my character, I kind of built him as an adaptable character, which is kind of cool. But I think he's slowly turning into almost like a true neutral because honestly, like half the things I'm like, well, it's happening, you know.
Well,
Like I just watched some dude get freaking murdered into the void, and I'm just like,
literally the most chill guy.
he's just
Yeah,
on
seriously.
vacation.
He's just the chillest guy. And he's just like,
Man, the druid being a
Alright.
chill guy.
I mean, you gotta understand the context behind that because
I'm gonna find
when
some.
you guys
Throw it on our
explained what
shit.
the adventure was
Dude,
going to happen,
he already has
there
some.
was such a brief moment.
He's been doing it the
of
whole
what you guys
time.
told me. You guys were just like, we have these orbs, and we're gonna go someplace and deliver these orbs. And
Here,
I was
take
like,
one.
Cool. That was literally how the whole like beginning part happened.
Right.
I guess the introduction to all of our characters happened, and so.
Well, and that's definitely.
Up until recently, I didn't actually know what our direction in this thing was. We're just like
Right.
going there and there and
Harry
whatever.
was
you know?
just lost.
Well, and that's
But it was
definitely
okay 'cause
like.
we were having fun.
He
Yeah, I
was
was gonna say
enjoying
that's
himself.
definitely on
He was
us because
finding
I mean
monsters,
the only way it could have happened organically is if our party somehow like got you to come in a like reasonable manner.
If
But-
we had to talk you into it,
But I
like
think
we
we
did
were-
Caprit.
Yeah, I was gonna say we had to like we would have had to like take a moment and kind of just like out of game figured out like a way to like talk to you to get you to come along that made sense.
Don't get me wrong. I
But-
thought that was really comedic and actually really fun.
Right, yeah.
It was actually way more fun to not have an idea of what's going on and just look like we're gonna go.
I guess we're
do this
going.
thing.
It just fits well with the whole, like, just feeling of just Candle, which is just that group.
Oh.
Is just because it is literally just this chaotic, murdering gaggle of just random people that like just kind of just go.
We're just the Scooby Doo
Kinda.
gang.
It's
Kinda,
we're not
yeah.
We're not the Scooby Doo gang.
We are the Scooby Doo
We are.
gang.
How are we the Scooby Doo gang?
Well, Asdal's Scooby.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you?
Oh yeah, who's Shaggy?
Who probably Beethoven.
Beethoven.
Or Michael. Or
What?
Michael.
Fred. 100%.
I'm
Yeah.
Fred.
Fred.
No, yeah, Fred.
Fred.
No, Guntor is fraud. the Fred's giant fucking
Brother.
swole ass cousin.
Fraud. No,
Doesn't fucking
Guntor's Velma.
Guntor's not Velma.
Guntor's not Velma.
There
Well,
was
it's like
actually
some analytical person. So whoever's the analytical person, which is no one in our group.
Well, technically that would be Asdal,
Technically
but
that's-
he's
Okay.
but he's Scooby.
He's already Scooby.
He's already
'cause
Scooby.
But he's already Scooby.
there is technically another reason that he left, although he didn't bring attention to it.
Which
What?
is
There was, do you still remember?
Did I forget something?
You
My
had
backstory?
you had a vision like the night before they showed up.
Oh, I totally forgot.
I won't say what they are, but these 12 different artifacts being placed throughout the world, and one being placed in the same city as him.
And
Oh,
I
okay.
promptly forgot about that. So
And kind of a
That's
bit
my
of an
bad.
urge to find him.
now was that
I
something?
mean, that's okay if your character wants to follow it or not, but yeah.
right. Is that something you guys had in like a written backstory thing, or is that something you just gave to him like
it
on
was
the
a
fly?
Vision. It was a vision that I think it was a vision that happened like on the session. I think.
Is that what happened?
Is that
No,
what
it was before.
Or it was
Yeah.
or it was part of the backstory.
Was it pre-written backstory stuff?
I think it was
Well,
backstory.
it was
that
something I gave to him, but I guess it would be considered backstory because it happened before he met you guys.
Before
Right.
he met
But it
you
was
guys,
like
but
an
it was-
introduction to the session. So it wasn't just like, here I am at an observatory, you guys just
Yeah.
appear. You know, so that way it filled a plot hole
Of like why?
because if
would-
you guys were to go and ask me, well, like, what's the thing that happened, the big event that happened that caused
dark
this-
light.
Yeah, the dark light.
The black
If you-
white.
If you guys asked me, like, oh, you know, what happened to you during the dark light, and then there was just a plot hole there because I either pull something out of my ass, or I would just like not say
Well, you
anything.
didn't actually get affected by the dark thing. I don't think.
Was that what we came up with?
Did you not have an 18 in a
He
file?
doesn't have custom abilities, so he.
Oh, that too.
he-
Yeah.
he-
Yeah.
he's not.
I haven't done
affected by it.
any custom abilities just because I'm still trying to learn D&D
Just on vacation.
and the whole thing.
It's just on vacation.
And I mean, like today I just made my 4th character, which would have been for the one shot tonight, but I don't know. Like I'm still learning how things work and such.
With the
So,
game.
Yeah, just gameplay and things.
Yeah.
So I'd say by now I'm like pretty much figured it out well
Right.
enough.
Well, and I mean, you're still just trying to pick up like Druid and all the fucking bazillion
Yeah,
spells
Druid,
that you're having to go through
Rex,
all the
Druid.
time.
There's too many spells.
Yeah, I would say anyone who has to
Too
prepare
many
There's
spells.
in this game.
There's too many spells because
I don't think
I
it's
know
that bad.
95 spells.
Well, you have to
Plus,
read
I
and
got
learn
traits.
and memorize every one
I
of them.
so cool
don't
so
need-
easily.
What?
Good job. Not all of us have that blessing.
There's just too much to
It
do.
is very,
and
like,
you get easily
overwhelming.
overwhelmed. Yeah.
Especially when you're sitting there on Adventures Codex and you just do like 40, 50 billion
My
spells.
biggest issue with just like
I
the
actually
spells
like
on
that.
Adventurers Codex is just because Adventurers Codex doesn't actually have all the spells from like all the different books.
Right.
It'd
So
be
when
so
you're just, like,
nice if
going
they just
through the list
imported
trying
them.
to add all your
Yeah.
spells,
Well,
you
hopefully,
just have
if
to
we
manually
blow up,
fill in, like, half of them.
we can.
We
We'll
We'll
have
bring
them.
Adventurers Codex with us.
We'll bring them to the top with us.
More time for you.
I mean, when I
Switch to
did,
D&D Beyond.
No, they already have enough of a following.
They have enough
Adventures
money.
Codex needs some love.
I did at some point. It doesn't have to be now. I did want to go back to the first point.
Which is?
The first question
the
you
Joe the
asked of
Barkeep?
being a normal dude.
Oh yeah.
So the book I recently backed on Kickstarter. I don't know if they have late or anything, but it's called "Those Who Wander," to give credit where credit is due. But that's actually part of what they did. So they introduced a step system. So there's 3 steps to get to the class you want.
Okay.
So you start out as either an adept or a scrapper. The adept is the beginning of magic, and the scrapper is the beginning of any of the martial classes.
Okay.
So all you get for the adept is 2 cantrips and 2 first level spells.
Just of your choice.
Yeah. And you get 2 first level spell slots. And then you choose intelligence, wisdom, or they call it presence or charisma. And then for the scrapper, all you get is you crit on a 19 or a 20, and you're proficient with simple weapons and light armor.
So the adept doesn't get crits then until they actually get a class.
Well, no.
You
You crit on a 19 or a 20.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, and I mean,
And then the adept's health die is a d6, and the health die for the scrapper is a d8.
And then once you actually like get the first level, then just all of that basically goes away, and it's just your normal first
Well,
level.
that is the first step. That counts as basically the first level.
Well, I mean, like the first level in your like class. Does that
Kind
like,
of.
do you
So
technically get it? 'Cause,
after
for
that,
example,
I'll just describe the whole thing. So after that, we'll start with the scrapper side.
okay.
Scrapper goes into brawler or warrior,
Okay.
and then brawler turns into assassin or ranger, rogue or ranger,
Right.
and then warrior turns into contender or paladin, which I assume is kind of like fighter or barbarian,
Right.
something like that. And then adept goes into apprentice or chosen, which apprentice turns into bard or mage,
Mhm.
and then chosen turns into priest or witch, cleric or warlock.
Right. Okay. And so are you just so your first whatever like 3 stages or is that your first 3 levels? And does that mean you're going from 1 to 17 on class levels, or what does that mean?
It's a lot slower of a process from what I can tell.
that makes sense.
Right.
Because okay, so let's look at apprentice, which is the step up from adept to get to either bard or wizard. So you get an additional cantrip of your choice. You also gain a spell slot, which whose level is equal to your current highest slot. So you get another first level spell slot, and then you learn another spell for which you have spell slots.
Okay.
So you get 1 more cantrip, 1 more spell, and 1 more slot.
Right. And you just get to add that to whatever whatever class you're already going
And then
into.
it also gives you a sort of arcane recovery like thing. On a short rest, you can recover spell slots half your level. Yeah.
Okay.
Half your steps. Yeah.
Which I think is definitely like that's probably the closest you can get because it, unless you really want to go to the point where you're like, yeah, I'm literally just some dude, right? Who just is going out and doing stuff like that. Because you have to have, I guess, some basis of like fighting or magic in
To
your
make
life,
it, yeah.
right? To be able to even do anything out there, right? I mean, if that's because eventually, if that's what you want to do, right? You want to become like a skilled swords fighter, or you're just hoping that because I would imagine, at least from my perspective, you want to start as a Joe Schmo to see what the story turns you into, right?
Yeah.
You're Joe Schmo, but like.
What
you
class
know,
is Joe Schmo gonna have?
Right, I don't know. Let's say like a wizard approaches you and he's like, "Yeah, I'm magic," and you're just like, "Okay," and then you become a wizard, and but just like you know what I'm saying, where it's just like you're not deciding what you want to be beforehand. The story is guiding
just
you
comes
and
up.
turning you into that,
Well, that's kind of what
which is what it sounds like it does for you. You're still kind of leaning
You
into
either want to
like
pursue
a-
magic or you want to pursue
Right,
martial.
exactly.
But
Talkin.
yeah, it's about as simple as
God,
you're
and that's I'd say that's a pretty
You're
good
a
method
paladin.
of getting
God
at least
bless you,
to
sir.
that.
This is also the same book I got the heirloom idea from.
Maybe heirloom idea.
Good boy.
Is that still something you want to do for the
Yeah.
following one?
They'll all be story based though. That's why they're not doing. That's why they're not coming from the one shot. Like all the heirlooms will tie into the backstories.
The backstory heirlooms.
So is what you just described, is that like quote unquote the right way to create a character? I know there's no right way to create a character.
No.
This is like literally a different.
Yeah, this is a homebrew book that was on Kickstarter that I backed.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
character
like-
creation, because obviously you have session 0, right, which is where you do that stuff, you do character creation and all that, and you can do it. I mean, to any degree you want to. Obviously, in far as like D&D goes, you just need basically are just picking a background class, race.
Adding some
I think
items.
that's it. Yeah, that's it. Maybe not even that. It's like when you're doing that, you're really just choosing from whatever you have going on based on whatever you want to make. And so it really is kind of up to you however you want to make a character.
Well, then I guess that leads me to like a follow-up question almost. Like, how do you guys create your characters? Because I know personally, I found that I usually start with my class.
Heads or tails?
And then I work my way through that, and that, like, I kind of let the
So you like.
I kind of let the creation
Dude,
create the own
I've been
character.
flipping
Like,
that all day.
so
And I
easier
just
to
keep
say.
Right, no, I know what you're saying.
You want to try.
Right,
and
so,
you
like,
build something from it.
Today,
Tails.
I don't know. I don't really care if I talk about my character before our next one shot. So I started with. I knew I wanted to do a rogue
Which one?
because
Tails.
I've done. Well, my
Fine,
first one was a fighter. I did a fighter, then I did a druid,
Right.
and
This
then
is-
I
this
just
one's
did
brand new.
a barbarian.
Barbarian, yep.
So I've
This is
done
2021 quarter.
brute strength,
Nice.
basically, tons of spells, a second brute strength one,
Right.
and now I was like, okay, I want to try something where it's a little more tactical, a little more technical, and so then I was like, okay, what can I do with that? And I thought, well, maybe half elf might be fun because there's some parts in half elves, like in the subclasses, that can be
Right.
entertaining and can work really well with creating a good character that has a relevant story to itself. And I just kind of let it snowball into the rest.
Right. So you do the build first and then follow it up with the background,
I think that's
more or less.
where- I
So
think
you
that's
choose
where
the background class and race, and then you like basically justify, like this is why all this connects.
Right.
Because this is right.
All the characters
I feel like
I've
that's
liked.
where-
Which is probably what
That's where you
most
differ.
people should do, but
Yeah, I feel like the reason why we, like, none of us do it that way is because none of us started with D&D. We all
Or any even MMO game really. Like
I mean,
any game like D&D. Like none of you guys ever played Diablo, WoW, anything like that.
yeah, like, so all of our.
Closest thing I ever played was Skyrim.
right, yeah, me too.
Well, Skyrim too.
Yeah.
Kinda
I mean,
has a similar thing.
I didn't even
Well,
play
I played-
Skyrim.
well, I played-
Yeah, I played Skyrim.
Can you guys think
I
about
played a
what I
lot of
played in
the
Skyrim?
Fallout games, but,
I was a Nord who wore heavy armor with a big two-handed
in
weapon.
terms of like actual, in
What?
Crazy, right?
In terms of like actual like tabletop role playing games, we all started with Scuffed,
And New Realms.
And you realms.
Scuffed and U Realms, and U Realms is like
U realms is like D&D, but for baby babies.
It is some.
Like, if you've never played a tabletop, U-Realms is the way to go.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, because it's basically only one-shots. The
Yeah.
whole game is literally just geared towards one-shots.
It's one shot, so then
Pumping out a character.
you pump out a
as
character in like an
fast as you
hour
can.
or an hour and a half for everyone.
You think
An
it
hour and a
took
half.
hour?
No, an hour and a half. Not like with the DM, with every person. An hour and a half total, maybe. That's it.
To make your
Not
guys.
even. Because, like, so much, because, like, a lot of it is, like, buying your stuff. Like, it's literally just, you can, like, shoot, it's, basically, it's all random, your character and stuff. Like, you don't, because, like, that's why I'm saying, like, even, like, ignoring you, guys, you can almost ignore U-Realms in terms of, like, our, like, character, in terms of how we build our characters and its influence. Because U-Realms is basically completely random. Your race is random. Your class selection is random. Your abilities and stuff are technically not random, but you have to buy selective ones. Like, you don't get all of your class stuff. Your items that you start with are random, and
In
you
a
have
shop?
to buy, or is a random shop that you have to buy stuff from at the beginning. And it's like, and because of that, it's like it's very just like you don't really have a whole lot of control over it.
Yeah, you pressed a button. I didn't press a button.
But so the reason why we don't go based on why we don't think I want to do this class and then build from there, and a lot of us go, I want like a character that like
Oh, it's because I was
has like this sort of like ability at its core, and then build from there. Or I want a character with this personality and build from there. Is because with Scuffed, it was literally just you just made up your abilities, and that's technically true with even current version Scuffed. There's preset abilities now. You don't have to use any of them. You literally just do only custom abilities, and just basically, and because there's no classes either, it's just here's how many stat points you have, here's how many skill points you have, assign them how you wish, and then just either select or like make up abilities that fill in those slots. And that's the current system, but
So
because of that it's
is that how you start your character when you do?
kind of
Well,
You
because
start with like a personality or
the other.
I start mine with a flaw.
A lot of the time I have like sometimes it's like an idea for we were talking about this today.
All of my characters
you
that I
have an
like are
idea
they just start
for
with a flaw.
specific really cool moment,
they just start.
and then you just build a character because you want that to happen. Like
You
for
know how you start your
example,
characters.
with
Just look at
I
it.
just
good idea
make
for
character
doing
It kind of
whatever
varies
sounds
with you.
cool.
It's random.
yeah, pretty much. That's. I want this cool thing to happen, so I'm gonna build a character so that it happens. 'Cause that's basically what. Yeah, that's kind of how Asdal was. It was like, well, I connect runs. I kind of want a character that like has that like can have moments where like they're just tanking just so much random damage and they keep going down, but then they just keep getting back up, and the enemy just can't do anything about it. I just wanted like moments like that, so I was like, alright, I'm gonna make a robot that's just like fucking invincible.
can jump off a ship, land on the ground, and only take like what
2
quarter
damage.
off.
Something like that, like, or just being able to just tank the damage and not really.
Being willing to just dive off a ship.
Yeah, because I don't have to
I'm
worry
heading
about
out.
always dying.
See you later, Adam.
Yeah.
Alright.
Have a good time.
You too. Good luck. Good luck talking.
Goodbye, Adam.
Goodbye.
Oh god,
Adam.
Killed them.
you're gonna cause him to fall and he's just gonna crumble to the
I'm
floor.
gonna crush it.
He's gonna Harlem shake through the floor.
What?
Oh man.
Oh god.
I haven't heard that term in
Why
ages.
did you bring that back into my mind?
Harlem Shake.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess I can be
That
big
died
now.
a couple years ago, and that needed to stay
Do what?
buried.
I'm changing over from cool guy to big.
You wanna be big?
I'm big. Yeah, I'm big.
He's big.
Oh, you are also big.
That is true.
Enjoy your Taco Bell, bro.
Oh, I will. I love Taco Bell.
Wait, you want to go to cool guy?
I say you can move one over and be cool guy.
I just want
So
to
that
stand
John.
up, but I won't stand up on stream.
Huh?
I don't know. I just don't want to.
What?
He does.
Because because I'd be the only one standing up on stream. That's kind
Okay,
of
everybody stand up. We're gonna
All
take a
right,
standing break.
all rise for the pledge.
What's up, Kerfuffle Krew?
18 naked cowboys going in the showers at Ram Ranch.
Well,
gotta
we
see
cut-
Come flowing.
we gotta cut
Come
that out.
flowing, come flowing. What was it? Okay. But anyway,
Sorry,
Sorry.
keybinds are off.
Keybinds are off.
Keybinds are off.
Don't you dare.
Just leave it. It's
What
fine.
a fool. Fool.
Are we
Or-
ending it there then?
Do we want to? I just want to stand up. My knees were hurting.
Oh.
You know, old man.